The Cleveland Browns have released their first 53-man roster of the 2024 season. We're going to break it all down. Certainly some tinkering to come and moves to be made in the next days or coming days. We'll talk about it now. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jeff Floyd, and I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you need to be part of it. Don't miss any of the action. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. As Coach Stefanski said, the first could change as soon as tomorrow. The first 53-man roster of 2024. Final moves made today. We'll start, Michael Dunn was put on the reserve non-football illness list. I'm sure there's HIPAA laws involved and stuff, but you're kind of getting a little bit concerned here for Michael Dunn. He's one guy that, everybody's just said that he's out, and there's really been no specifications. Certainly hope everything is okay. We've learned Nyheim Hines will also join Nick Chubb in being out for the first 4 weeks of the season, as he will remain on the reserve non-football injury list. If everybody remembers, a year ago in the summertime, Nyheim was involved in a jet ski accident. Obviously recovering, but not all the way back or ready to participate yet. Nick Chubb, we got the news yesterday, will remain on the PUP list in this first month. Luke Whippler is on IR with designation to return. Assuming from a broken ankle, it will not be quickly. Mike Hall Jr. was put on the exempt commissioner list. For those who don't know, Michael is unable to practice. Michael is unable to play in games. Michael is unable to even be in the building for games. Mike does have access to the facilities. I'm assuming maybe that's just to work out. But that is where the situation currently is with Mike Hall. Brady Breeze was waived from injured reserve. Your cuts, Juwan Briggs, it was maybe looking promising. I'm assuming they're going to try and bring Juwan Briggs back. He was released. Amaron Brown, wide receiver, released. Jalen Jordan released. Christopher Edmonds, he actually had a nice summer for the Browns. So, maybe he comes back, but somebody could pick him up. Siaki Ika, we'll get to that a little bit later. Sam Kamara, Zaire Mitchell-Payton, tackle Lorenzo Thompson, tight end Trayton Welch, and wide receiver Michael Woods. Sorry for anybody I've had interactions with today. I'm okay with keeping David Bell in that scenario. Contracts terminated of Tony Brown, of Donta Foreman, certainly more on Donta. Cornerback Justin Hardy as well. Tackle Jermaine Irfidi, James Prochet. With the two corners, now I mentioned, and I did some spots, and I certainly talked about it here, these two guys who came over with pensions and resumes of being special teams contributors. How did that work now? With the change, certainly, and a lot of changes within the special teams, how does that work? I mean, we got both of these guys. We got to see these guys play extensive action at cornerback. They do not fit a Jim Schwartz defense. So there will be some younger players that are certainly going to be asked and expected to step up on special teams. The reserves corners, Cameron Mitchell, Halassi, Miles Harden, all these guys have a lot of special teams experience while in college. So they're going to be pressed upon and into duty for that, certainly with the Browns this season. Currently, you're going to keep 4 quarterbacks. You have currently on the roster. I don't know how long this is going to last. We know obviously Deshaun Watson's not going anywhere. I have no belief that Jameis Winston is going to be traded. I'm not going to say that maybe people didn't inquire to the Browns to see if Jameis Winston was available. But I'm also not going to say as a 100% definitive, it is not definite. It's not going to happen. When Mary Kay Cabot usually says things, there is something to it. So, I'm not going to dismiss that this couldn't possibly happen, but I don't believe the Browns, would want to get themselves in a scenario they got themselves into last year. That is why they were such quick to strike and get Jameis Winston here. DTR. I'm not saying he's the quarterback of the future. Maybe he's the number 2 of the future for the Browns. He had a really strong summer again. When we got to see DTR win a big ball game for this team last year, Tyler Huntley is still a member of the Cleveland Browns 53-man roster. I'm looking at teams like Arizona. I'm looking at teams like the Green Bay Packers. I'm looking at teams like the Raiders. There are teams that are still only having 2 quarterbacks on the roster. The way they originally made the rule that it was going to be your practice squad quarterback would dress, and if you need him, you could use him. Now that is not the case, which means most likely every NFL team probably is going to have to carry 3 quarterbacks. I don't like this. I don't like the way they did it. But if it is the rule and that's the rule, it's going to, tighten things for a lot of teams. And, you're now going to have to carry 3 quarterbacks on your 53-man roster. Tough break for a lot of NFL teams here, the way that one went down today. Running backs right now, you have just Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong. So only 2 running backs are on your roster right now. And Pierre Strong did return to practice, so at least he had 2 in practice. If you saw any of the practice footage today, you saw 2 tight ends working out with their tight end coach, 2 running backs work. I mean, there's only so much work he can get in. You can't run these guys into the ground in August when you got a game in a week and a half. Donta Foreman was released. Anybody you speak to, anybody you listen to, it does sound like Donta Foreman. This is one of the deals we have seen the Cleveland Browns do in the past where, they did it last year with Maurice Hurst. Just could be some fine tuning. Hey, I need to put you off the roster for a day. When we redo the contract, obviously, maybe I'll make it financially a little bit more, worth your while to bail out and help out the team in this scenario. But even still, though, I mean, it's tough to only have 3. Granted, you probably only get to dress 3, but to only have 3, the Browns are going to have to get a running back in here. Practice squad will start to get assembled tomorrow on Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll know about waiver claims at noon tomorrow. Wide receivers, nothing unexpected. It's Coop, it's Judy, it's Tillman, it's Moore, it's Thrash, it's David Bell. The 6 we thought were going to make this team did make this team. Like I said, 2 tight ends, David Njoku, and so David Njoku will certainly remain, and he will, of course, remain with second-year tight end for the Cleveland Browns, Jordan Akins, after his career with Houston Texans. And even Jordan Akins you really don't consider Jordan Akins a full-time tight end. He is receiving tight end. He is not a true tight end. They do keep the 10 offensive linemen. Everybody is back off their lists. Not everybody is practicing. Jed did not practice today, but Jack Conklin did. Jack spoke about his horrific knee injury. So the fact that Jack Conklin is even going to be ready to go for week 1 is crazy after how bad that knee got severed. Defense, it's 9 defensive linemen. Mike Hall, not yet. So we'll see if Jawan Briggs comes back. We'll see if the Browns are playing that market somewhere else. You have 6 linebackers. Could be a candidate there of one of those 6 linebackers to not make the final 53. Not make the next 53, as they have to start making some moves here. I'm sure the Browns are going to have some waiver claims in. 11 defensive backs. Could a Ronnie Hickman, could DeAnthony Bell, could one of these guys be in a tough spot where, their time here could end if something becomes a little more favorable for the Browns. And then, of course, your specialist of Hewlett, Baraquez, and, of course, kicker Dustin Hopkins. So it's been a day. We finally got to it. Some teams at the time of this recording haven't even released their first 53-man roster yet. So it's been a hectic day. We're going to break it down a little further. Your latest Locked On Brown continues. Thanks, everybody, for sticking around. You've heard us talk a lot about one of our favorite sponsors, FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with your YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game, including now 3 always in the 4 p.m. time slot. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. I suggest you become an everyday or join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. It is always available and it is always free wherever you get your podcasts. We are breaking down the Cleveland Browns' first 53-man roster for the 2024 NFL season. finalized today. Practice started at 3. It was kind of quiet, and we knew practice was going on. And good job by the beaters not spilling the beans while we were waiting for the information. Surprise cuts right off the bat. This wasn't a surprise cut. This is a difficult cut, which was second-year defensive tackle Siaki Ika. This is probably one where Jim Schwartz probably had some influence in the selection, and Jim came over here in 2023, and when you bring in a man of that prowess, you are going to listen to him. You are going to try to get him what he wants. And Siaki Ika, look, it's not like the Browns just pulled one out of their where by making this pick. Arif Hassan, if you don't know him, he does fantastic work. You should check it out. Does a consensus draft board every single year. I believe Siaki Ika was 73rd overall. And we're talking everybody from the top. I mean, there's probably 120 different boards that go into that. So it wasn't like Siaki Ika was just this, off-the-wall pick out of nowhere. Came to camp this year, looked like he was in a lot better shape. The body looked better. It just didn't work. And he's just not picking things up. He certainly, wasn't progressing. In years past, a team like the Cleveland Browns could have taken their time with a player like this, but with all the pressure and the expectations that a team like the Cleveland Browns currently have, you can't wait this out anymore. They just didn't have a choice. Does he come back to the practice squad? I don't know. Are they interested? I don't even know. But he is just a second-year guy who was a top 100 pick. There's got to be other NFL teams that are saying, I'm going to kick the tires. This guy, he's only been in the league a little bit more than a year. So Siaki Ika's time with the Cleveland Browns, in my opinion, are probably over. You heard me talk a ton. And anybody who's here and an everydayer, what are positions I talked about all draft? Running backs, tight ends. Well, here we are with our first 53-man roster, and we got 2 running backs on it. Most likely Donta Foreman's coming back. Got 2 tight ends on it. I just, if this is something the Browns, obviously running back is not something the Browns are going to be comfortable working with. I don't know if they thought maybe Nyheim Hines would be ready to go sooner. I don't know. We kind of felt, Nick, it was not going to be the beginning of the season. And a lot of running backs cut. Sanjay Perine, an interesting name, kind of a do-it-all guy, can run a little bit, certainly can receive a little bit. Somebody maybe the Browns have interest in. You got to get somebody else in here. Pierre Strong, I'm a fan. I know a lot aren't. I'd like to see Pierre get more time, his athleticism, his long speed. But it's got to be earned. You just don't want the guy to play because you got nobody else to play, if you understand what I'm saying. The wide receiver, it worked the way it worked, and look, and, it ended up today where it was like I was kind of bad-mouthing Mike Woods. I'm not at all. I just like David Bell. I think David Bell is a different receiver from every other receiver the Browns have. You guys have heard me talk before in the past. I think he kind of plays with a quarterback's mentality. I think he kind of knows how to find soft spots and knows where he's supposed to be. Obviously he had a huge play last year against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Bengals were playing their starters in week 18. David Bell had a couple of big touchdown receptions in that game. The offensive line, Jack Conklin, it looks like, is slated to probably start at left tackle. Does that mean Jed Wills is the swing tackle this year? Awful expensive swing tackle if that is the case. DeJuan Jones obviously gives you a chance going after this year to start to reset the finances of that offensive line room. Having a guy like Zach Zinter certainly helps you with that as well. We know that Nick Harris will be back to be the backup center. Javian Cohen, undrafted free agent, did make this team as a reserve guard. So if Zach Zinter is first one in, and God forbid you had to go with second one, it would certainly be Javian Cohen. James Hudson is here. Does James Hudson go back to a role he had a couple of years ago where he did play some, big tight end and obviously obvious running situations? Right now he's got no choice. he is tight end 3 for all intents and purposes. So your starters look to be, for right now, of course, Jack Conklin on the left, DeJuan Jones on the right, Jed Willis as your swing, and then Hudson as your swing, but probably your primary backup. Right tackles the Browns with 10 offensive linemen kept. Defensive line, look, the Mike Hall situation doesn't certainly help. I mean, I think everybody figured they were going to keep 10, and, we knew that 5 as the pass rushers were going to be Myles Garrett. They were going to be Zadarius Smith, Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, Alex Wright, and, of course, Elijah McGuire. Defensive tackle, Dalvin Tomlinson is back now, should be on target to play week 1. Shelby Harris, of course. Jefferson as well, Maurice Hurst, and then you probably figured it was going to be Mike Hall. Then when the talk came out yesterday that Mike Hall was most likely going to go to the commissioner's exempt list, you figured that probably opened the door for Juwan Briggs, because we all kind of felt Siaki Ika was going to be released, which he ultimately was. Are the Browns poaching around? Probably. Are the Browns looking around? My guess would be is they want a big boy. They're probably, you would looking for, a nice 325, 330 pound, some sort of guy can maybe give you some reps as a nose. Jefferson is primarily a pass rusher. Maurice Hurst is a gap penetrator and a pass rusher. Shelby Harris kind of does a little bit of everything. And we know what big old DT Dalvin Tomlinson is. The 6 linebackers, Devin Bush, Diabate, Fields, Hicks, JOK, and Nathaniel Watson. I'm not sure 6 is going to stay. I mean, I wouldn't be stunned if, they did move on here. Could it be a Fields? Could it be a Devin Bush? If something appeals to the Browns at another position, secondary at keeping 11, again, could you just go for safeties? D'Anthony Bell hasn't done much yet this summer, did return to practice, however, today. Ronnie Hickman, these guys, fringe players maybe right now, because the Browns do have that top 3, of Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit, and of course McLeod. So could that be a spot where some things are moved up or moved around? So overall, not a lot of surprises, certainly, as far as the cuts that were actually made. It's where are you going here, and what do you got to bring in? Right now for me, if we're putting a grocery list together for Andrew Berry and waiver claims that have hopefully been made, you got to think it's if the Foreman thing isn't a true done deal. And even still, you could be looking at a running back, and probably somehow, some way, certainly looking at a running back to bring into the practice squad. And again, I talked about this all spring. I gave you guys shows where I gave you a running back in every round of the draft of the Browns had picks that would have sufficed. Fortunately, they didn't go that route. And, with Chubb and Hines both slated to not see the field to the earliest being October, certainly a tough spot to be in this early. I do have a lot of faith in Jerome Ford, but, the Browns aren't just Jerome Ford, as far as the Browns would be a running back by committee. Foreman, Strong, if you get them all playing well at the same time, it's not a terrible trio to have as a running back by committee. But certainly, looks a little thin there right now. A tight end, maybe it's not as important to the Browns as I think it is. And we'll probably find out tomorrow. I think it's important. Maybe they don't. There's a lot of teams. I think Tennessee still has 4 or 5 on the roster. So, there's probably phone calls to certainly be made. There's no question about it. One other one I talked about, if you guys remember, Jerron Christian played a lot of left tackle for the Browns last year. Didn't play great, didn't play elite, played good. Would you bring in Jerron Christian maybe over Hudson? Certainly a possibility, just a thought. You there. So, you're always tinkering in this. One thing we know about Andrew Berry is he is always busy. He is always working on his roster. So we'll watch and see the way that this continues to unfold. Browns' first 53 has been dropped. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and we're going to talk a little bit more. So don't anybody go anywhere. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host here at Locked On Browns. I appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you need to join, make a new plan, stand, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, we talked a lot about guys returning to practice. Dalvin Tomlinson back at practice today. D'Anthony Bell back at practice today. Jack Conklin certainly back at practice today. And, I think Jack, and listen to the way he talks. And look, Jack's been through a lot in the NFL. Pretty much missed about 3 seasons of his career due to injury. And you could kind of hear it in him, just the way he spoke. You hit a certain point, where, you're appreciative of the time you've had in the game. And maybe you're starting to realize that your time playing the game is certainly closer to the end than it is at the beginning. And, Jack basically said, hey, that's what they need me to do. That's what they need me to do, which would certainly explain why we never got to see any of DeJuan Jones even attempt to do anything at the left tackle spot. But, Jack certainly been through a lot, Jack Conklin. And you certainly, develop an appreciation for a guy like that, still willing to go out there and, bust his butt and do it, for all that his body has been through physically over his time, within the NFL. So good, certainly, to get Jack back. All most of the skill guys, back to full routine. Amari, Jerry Jeudy, Jamari Thrash, congratulations, won the Browns rookie, the rookie award for training camp as far as being the most, standout rookie, and really did show well. It was 10 catches, 132 yards, and a touchdown. I'm not sure when and where and how much we'll see Jamari anytime soon. But, and the one thing I always try to talk about, and you guys know this, is, with any positional group, you kind of want to see the today of this group, and you kind of want to see the tomorrow of the group. And, as Jamari Thrash may not be the today part of the Cleveland Browns wide receiver room, as soon as 2025, he very well may be, part of it then. But, all these guys, and, I think everybody at any given time in this wide receiver room would be able to go in and contribute and be able to give you something at any given time, which is really, what you're looking for, the depth of this roster as compared to where it was when I started, basically talking about Myles Garrett and then just trying to find anything else to talk about with this team, as far as, where it could be in a few years. And, 2018 certainly had its, its sweet spot to it. All of that fizzled out quickly, then became the Berry and Stefanski regime and hit the ground running, hit strong. Certainly has had some bumps in the road, but, righted the ship in 2023. So you really, really starting to develop appreciation for the way this, organization is run, the way they're doing business. I sat down today and did an episode that you'll be able to see on the Locked On NFL handle, probably early next week. And, even those guys were talking about, just the perception of the way the Cleveland Browns are run. You have players that want to come here. You have players that perform. You have ownership that is willing to spend money. It is a whole different, genre, regime, era of Cleveland Browns football. And the expectation here for 2024 is the sky high, and it absolutely should be. You've got playmakers. You've got a defense. And I'll continue to say it. I think the defense should be even better in 2024 than it was in 2023. Players are established. They have a lot more comfortability with each other, a lot more nuance of the scheme that they are, working within, have a lot of more understanding of the players around them and what they are capable of. So it's not stunning to believe that, this franchise should be better on the defensive side of the ball. Should certainly be consistent. The defense should probably travel a little better on the road this season. It's going to come down a ton, certainly, to Deshaun Watson and the offense. It's going to come down to this offensive line, and definitely a question. There's no doubt. I mean, your top three tackles all coming off of season-ending knee injuries. Yes, the Browns were able to manipulate their way through that last year. But we know it's been a lengthy process for DeJuan. He was the first one back. We know it's certainly been a lengthy process for Jack Conklin. It's still a process for Jed Wills. He can practice at any time. He's off the list, did not practice today. And of course, now the closer we get to regular season, nobody's willing to, show their hold cards. It would be nuts to think that Jed Wills is your, swing tackle, but if they think DeJuan's better on the right side and they don't want to stop his growth path, and then you think Jack can handle maybe one season at left tackle, it's an interesting approach, certainly, for this team to look into. So, yes, I still think the activity and the construction of this roster, it wouldn't stun me if there were 2 to 3 moves tomorrow. Certainly looking at the running back position, certainly for me, at least, looking at the tight end position, that defensive line room at 9, just 4 defensive tackles. Last year they didn't have the talent that they, have this year. And I still think, Dalvin Tomlinson's probably not ready for a full workload. And again, Jefferson is more of a guy you're going to play in nickel and dime than necessarily going to play on 1st and 10. Maurice Hurst. So you've got a lot there, but I think you would like that big, beefy guy, who's going to play, in 1st and 10. He's going to play in 3rd inches. He's going to play in your goal line situations. to acquire these guys, you could move on from a linebacker because I do believe the number right now is 26 on defense, which means you got 24 on offense, and obviously your 3 specialists. So you could move on from a linebacker. You don't necessarily maybe have to keep 3 safeties. So all stuff to monitor here as the Browns continue to get this as best and as tight as they possibly can for September 8th against the Dallas Cowboys at 425. We all know CeeDee Lamb is now signed. I never had any questions, obviously, so CeeDee Lamb will certainly be there. But it'll be a big one. Dallas Cowboys can get after the quarterback. And, this new offensive line coach, Coach Dickerson, and, will he have his guys ready to go out the gate, which will probably be the ultimate determining factor of how week 1 goes. But we're going to continue to bust out the content day in, day out. You'll hear from us tomorrow because I'm sure there's going to be moves made, stuff coming Thursday, all through the weekend. Getting excited, getting a little geeked up as we get closer and closer to 2024 Cleveland Browns regular season football. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate everybody who came in today, listened to the reaction episode here as the Browns have released their first 53-man roster for the season. More tinkering to come, no doubt. We know Andrew Berry. He's always a worker, a perfectionist. Everything's got to be done to such a basically the letter T. So always a work in progress. So that certainly will not stop. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd is a bunch of filthy animals, but they're my filthy animals. I suggest you join the filthy animals. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available, is always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.